in sight. Here is Donald Trump yesterday.
I think we have the confines of a deal. I hope we have the confines of a deal. I believe we're going to pretty soon have a full ceasefire, and then we're going to have a contract. And the contract's being negotiated, the contract in terms of dividing up the lands, et cetera, it's being negotiated as we speak.
On Wednesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump agreed in principle to move forward with a 30-day partial ceasefire, halting attacks on energy and infrastructure. Russian President Vladimir Putin has theoretically agreed to the same deal a day earlier. But no deal has been solidified. The Russian readout was different than the Americans' readout. And just hours later, Russian drones struck civilian infrastructure in northeastern Ukraine. Joining us now is Alexander Vindman. He is a senior advisor to Vote Vets and the former National Security Council Director of European Affairs. He's also the author of The Folly of Realism, How the West Deceived Itself About Russia and Betrayed Ukraine. It feels like that's happening right now.
It does. It does. Welcome, Alex. Good to see you, man. Look, I want to get your read on a level of optimism about where this is headed, particularly given that, according to Reuters, a Kremlin source told them, quote, Putin is trying to put pressure on Trump and will continue the war. The Ukrainians will retreat and slowly lose territory and people. Is that your assessment of this, of what Putin is doing? And so all of this sort of face-saving around a ceasefire is more political theater than ultimately political reality?
First of all, thanks for having me on. Good seeing you, Michael, too. I think this is a fool's errand, frankly. Just listening to the posturing for this, you know, the clip that you played of Trump saying dividing up the lands. I mean, my gosh, where are we starting? Like, this is Russia's basically, it's the idea that Russia has been successful in conducting this war of military aggression and now gets its reward, gets some division of lands. And listening to Steve Witkoff's interview with Tucker Carlson was absurd. I mean, the guy doesn't understand that just because you have a Russian-speaking population, a legacy of imperial Russia, that these are not folks that welcome the barbarism, the rape, the pillaging, the destruction, the oppression by the Russians during the conduct of this war. It's not even the concept of a plan. I think I would wish that I was wrong about this one. I hope that the Ukrainians get what they want, which is an enduring ceasefire. They want it more than anybody else. But the way that we're going about it, easing pressure on Russia and putting pressure on Ukraine is not something that's going to yield results. It's the whole idea that the subtitle of my book, that we deceive ourselves about Russia and betray Ukraine. We pander to Russia. We are accommodating to Russia. We are appeasing Russia repeatedly over the course of multiple administrations. Trump, even over the course of his 4 years with Putin in his first term, should have learned some of these lessons. Instead, he's taking the worst instincts, the worst mistakes we've done, and amplified them. And this is not because I don't want peace. It's just everything that we have done wrong is being repeated and amplified under Trump. Instead of figuring out how to increase leverage over Russia, how to get them to come to the negotiating table, they're not the ones that are uncompromising, and not increasing the burden on Ukraine, which we should be supplying more, supporting more, so it's more of an even playing field for negotiations. It's the exact opposite way of getting a deal here.
Well, I mean, you're talking about the appeasement we have seen over multiple administrations. Donald Trump trying to sell it a different way. This is what he had to say about NATO at the White House just yesterday.
NATO is solid, they're strong, but they have to treat us fairly. They have to give up because, look, without us, NATO's not the same thing. And I can tell you, I've been having very good discussions, as you know, with President Zelensky and with President Putin. And President Putin will tell you that without the United States, he wouldn't be worried. But he is worried when the United States is involved.
Okay, so I want to take that in two parts, Colonel Vindman. One, this idea that the United States is not being treated fairly by NATO. That is something we have heard from this president before. And two, if what he is saying is true, the flattery that Putin is using on Trump to say, you know, I'm worried because you're so strong, you're so powerful. Is Putin, in fact, worried about the United States as a global superpower so long as Donald Trump is the one sitting in the White House?
Well, so that's the key. As long as Donald Trump is sitting in the White House, he's less worried because he knows he could effectively manipulate Donald Trump. But in absolute terms, of course, he's extremely concerned about the U.S. He's deathly afraid of anything that spirals into a direct confrontation, let alone a nuclear war. He is deathly afraid of the potential of a nuclear war. He's an empire builder, not an empire destroyer. He wants Russia to be great again. So I think from this standpoint, you know, we're just getting effectively manipulated because Putin could go skirt to the line with regards to dangles, shiny, bright objects for Trump, like peace, like these business deals. And he hasn't even started threatening him. That's when Trump really bends and breaks. I mean, that pattern's been pretty well established with regards to strong states showing resolve and defending their interests, whether it's tariffs or Russia with its saber rattling. This idea of NATO, the U.S. Being the backbone to NATO, that's true. But Trump has been damning NATO ever since 1987. 2 weeks after his first trip, he took out a full-page ad in the New York Times talking about how the U.S. is carrying the burden on NATO, and that the U.S. shouldn't potentially be involved. So he has this deep animus towards NATO, as if they're not paying their dues. Yes, we need to rebalance. We need additional burden sharing. The Europeans are stepping up in a big way. They're going to start spending more on their defense. They'll be more involved in Ukraine. But it shouldn't be at the cost of our most important security relationship and, frankly, our most important economic relationship, a source of U.S. prosperity and wealth. And the reason that we're as great as we are today is because of our partnerships with the Europeans, NATO, and the EU. So it's an absurd way to conduct policy with regards to our allies, and it's an absurd way to conduct policy with regards to our adversaries when we want them to come to the table to end this disastrous war that's been destabilizing Europe, the U.S., and the globe.
Ukrainian officials and American officials will meet in Saudi Arabia on Monday. Russian officials and American officials will also meet. We have no confirmation that Ukrainian officials and Russian officials will sit at the table together. Before we let you go, Mr. Vindman, you're on the list. The White House put out a statement yesterday revoking security clearances for a number of individuals, saying it is not no longer in the national interest. And you are on this list. Your reaction to the White House naming you in this absurd and very bizarre statement?
Sure. Thanks for having me on again. But I'm not a weak-kneed billionaire that could be bullied around. I'm not a massive D.C. law firm with nearly unlimited resources that could be brought to heel by some empty threats. I haven't had an active security clearance for 5 years. And guess what? I revoke the president's revocation. I reinstate my security clearance, and because it's meaningless. I mean, it's noise. It's Friday night theater is what we're seeing here, because they're running out of really cool plays. So now they're digging deep, and it's pretty absurd where they're headed. And frankly, I don't care. This is not something that's going to lose sleep over. Frankly, I'll make fun of it.
Brother said he hadn't had a security clearance in 5 years.
He said, I revoked the revocation.
I revoked the revocation. Do your homework, administration. Brother didn't even have it.
President also does not have a security clearance unless they had one before. But again, why do the facts matter here? Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, we appreciate your time, and thank you for being a patriot. Refill that mug, folks. There is another jam-packed hour of the weekend coming up. Melissa Murray, Ankush Kaduri, and Maryland Congressman Glenn Ivey will all